Good evening. We're going to let Gary start off with a historic perspective on the sanitation system. He's been involved with it for a good number of years, and then I'll take over from there.
Okay, thank you. As Tim indicated, my purpose here is to talk about where we've been and why we're going in the direction that we're going at this time. Our modern sanitation system, you can trace its roots back to about 1993 when there was a federal law entitled Subtitle D that essentially forced municipal landfills into greater regulation and a greater regulatory scheme. Whereas before in Latah County and the city of Moscow, it was essentially an unlimited volume system that your garbage was picked up, it was taken to a landfill, currently the same landfill that is located east of town or the same location. And essentially it was as much as you threw away went in that landfill. When Subtitle D was enacted, and it was to originally become effective on October 1st of 1993, those landfills became regulated. If you had a municipal landfill, no longer could you just dump garbage into the ground. It then had to be monitored. There were daily cover requirements, and there were monitoring wells that were required, systems that had to be set up for any leachate or runoff of the landfill. So it became very expensive. This kind of led to a situation where you either had to finish up and seal your landfill, the one you are currently using, prior to that date in 1993, or else it had to be Subtitle D compliant at a great expense. So at that point, the city looked at a bunch of different options along with Latah County and essentially came upon the solution that we would contract with what's now been called a regional landfill, or used to be called a mega landfill. Essentially what it is in the more arid climates. In this case, they were looking at one by Wenatchee. There are a couple down on the south of the the Columbia River in Oregon. So we started a long haul of the city's municipal solid waste. So at that time, it obviously became very expensive to ship garbage. Although we had a pretty good rate because Waste Management, who was the contractor at the time, had started to site a landfill in Adams County, Washington, which is about 85 to 90 miles away, and gave us a rate that reflected that shipping cost for 90 miles. Well, they never did open that landfill, so they are now we are getting our garbage shipped to Boardman, Oregon for the same price as if it was shipped only 90 miles near Washtenaw, Washington. So a pretty good rate. But it also stood to reason that if you're shipping garbage, it's going to cost you more money. So essentially we went to a volume-based system at that time, and that volume-based system was intended just as our water system in Moscow is. The more you use, the more it costs you to reflect the cost of providing the service. I'll let Tim talk a little more about that volume-based system, but it's essentially been an honor system up till now. If you can either have 1, 2, 3 can a week service, or you can have, if you take 1 can service and then you have an extra can, you can buy a tag at a local grocery store down in the finance department, put that tag on, and that will pay for that extra can. The way it's been going for the last several years has been that has not worked as well as we would have liked. And Tim will talk about his solid waste audit here in a few minutes. It became clear to us in 2008 that we needed to make some pretty, big changes in our sanitation department. You got a $3.1 million budget. I would assist in managing it. Don Palmer, our finance director, would assist in managing it, but it never had somebody who was dedicated to just that system like we do for the water system or the sewer system. So we hired Tim, who came to us from Whitman County with a lot of experience in managing landfills. And tasked him immediately to go out, look at our system, and look at things that could be done to improve it. And the reason is to provide the most efficient system we can at the most value to our constituents, our ratepayers, in a way that is environmentally friendly and sustainable. So I will leave you to Tim right now. I'll be available to answer questions or may add if necessary, but Tim wants to talk to you about the audit, which was conducted last spring, and also other items relating to the development of the strategic plan.
Thank you, Gary. Solid waste services have historically ranked high based on citizen survey responses for both quality and value, as you can see there on the charts. MSW costs are influenced by disposal options, meaning local versus long haul, and as well as contractual agreements. Historically, Latah County residents haven't been in favor of the local landfill option. We do have a pretty good contract in place, like Gary said, for the long haul and disposal with an option through the year 2023. There are a couple local options that folks are in the midst of developing that we've been monitoring. There's a SWAB group. It's a Solid Waste Advisory Board group that consists of Nez Perce, Idaho, Clearwater, and Lewis counties. They've been working together with Idaho Waste Systems and been searching for a regional landfill somewhere within their borders. They haven't found or cited a landfill site as of yet. And also Whitman County's been looking at developing a new Subtitle D landfill, and their progress has been slowed somewhat by some groundwater and land issues over there. And then the chart there on the bottom just demonstrates how the solid waste system here, I think those numbers include all of Latah County, but within our system, we do a pretty good job of diverting waste. We're consistently around 50%, as the upper numbers show there. About 11% of the material is recycled. We landfill about 28% in the inert demolition, and then we compost somewhere around 10%. Those compost numbers also don't include the 4,000 tons annually of the biosolids that are also composted. This chart illustrates some collection rates from some neighboring communities. With the exception of Sandpoint and Pullman, the others have local options for disposal. The Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai, and Post Falls, they have a landfill south of Coeur d'Alene up near Fighting Creek where their waste is shipped. Lewiston hauls theirs across the river to Asotin County. Then Sandpoint and Pullman still contract with Waste Management, and theirs gets shipped down to Arlington, Oregon. This chart shows the first column there is Moscow. Of course, that is a 2-can rate, and the others are a 65-gallon cart equivalent rate. The audit findings had a large influence on the development and the goal setting of this strategic plan. As you can see, there are some of the results of the audit. We found a lot of extras and over services that weren't being recorded. 23% of the services were not being billed for. About $121,000 of lost revenue. A lot of uncovered waste and unsightly and unhealthy neighborhoods and conditions. These just reflect some of the common occurrences that we ran into while we were out conducting the audit. Following the refuse audit, the process of developing the strategic plan became necessary to lay a pathway and successfully correcting collection issues, as well as taking a look at some infrastructure and facility needs. We also conducted a SWOT analysis and an evaluation of the existing sanitation system, and that helped us in developing the strategic plan. Strategic plan goals, and I mentioned this before, but these goals listed are in no particular order of merit, and they'll be discussed individually as we go along. But when we developed these goals, we tried to address the collection inefficiencies, public health, neighborhood aesthetics, infrastructure improvements, and also the revenue requirements to bring all these goals to fruition. First goal listed is services and programs. The sanitation industry is constantly evolving with new technologies, equipment, concepts, and methods for managing the waste stream. Balancing fiscal and environmental impacts, as well as the needs of the community, are always a consideration when we develop new services and programs. Second one was the route management system, which I guess I better switch that. The route management system, which I talked a little bit about after the audit was conducted. The route management system will efficiently improve the customer information flow between utility billing, LSI, and then on to collection staff. The system will also create a much more in-depth management style and streamlined approach to the day-to-day collections and billing of the solid waste stream. I'll talk a little bit about the system. First of all, what we'll do is create an interface between the accounting software used in the finance office and the utility billing, as well as Latah Sanitation's accounting system, and we'll get those two systems communicating. And then that information will be downloaded to onboard computers that will be mounted in the collection vehicles, which will give collection staff sequential order of the routes. It will give addresses. It will give GPS coordinates. It will give the services that the folks are signed up for. So it just takes all the guesswork out of it. It allows for the drivers to record exceptions if they're unable to get to something to pick it up, if there are extras, any number of things. It has photographic capability that while that customer is up on the screen and that particular customer's being serviced, if there's something out of the ordinary, some sort of an exception, they can take a photo and that'll be downloaded right to the customer's file. If there's complaints down the road, we have that on record and we can simply communicate back and forth to the customer. So I'm really excited about this system, and I think it's going to be probably one of the best things that we've done to the system. So. Some of the challenges in the utility billing end, we have about 5,500 residential accounts, and that two-way flow of customer account information and service level status, that's currently lacking. We have service level status changes that take place constantly. Over the course of the year, it's well over 1,000. Especially at the beginning and the ending of the school year. So it's hard to keep track of that and communicate those changes back and forth. And then on the collection end of it, street address identification is a big one. It's hampered by trees and alley and side street service, and there's a lot of other obstacles out there as well. Oftentimes, immediate neighbors also set their trash out right next to each other, and very rarely are the cans marked with addresses or names or anything, so that causes another identification problem. Precipitation. Many of the containers are set out without lids, and much of the waste is set out with no container at all. I've estimated that 300 to 400 tons annually that we ship down to Oregon, we're paying just in water weight. And that's just on the residential end. It's probably much greater on the commercial end. But Moscow will soon also be dealing with the EPA-mandated stormwater utility, and this infiltration and leakage will be and is a direct contributor to stormwater contamination, and we'll eventually have to deal with it. The effects of these precipitation issues can be prevented and minimized with covered and containerized storage. The rollout cart or toter concept is an option that addresses many of the shortcomings and problems we face with neighborhood health and aesthetics and the storage of waste or lack thereof currently in place. The next slides will discuss some of the advantages and other considerations. Carts allow ease of use by the customer as well as collection staff, and when incorporated with a volume-based system where proportionally higher charges are billed for larger containers, it encourages customers to recycle more, reduce the waste they dispose of, and ultimately puts the customer in control of their solid waste rates. Many of the manufacturers of these carts use 30% post-consumer resin in the manufacturing of the carts, and they still have to achieve stringent national testing standards. And many manufacturers also offer recycling and buyback programs after the cart's useful lifespan, in which the old carts are ground up and blended with virgin resin in the manufacturing of the new carts. And of course they have attached lids, so you don't have to worry about the lids blowing away or the collection guy losing it or what have you. Many government entities that have converted to automated collection have reported efficiency increases, meaning increased households served per man hour from anywhere from 15 to 300%. And less container service, meaning that, for instance, if someone signed up for 2-can service now, which we require them to be 36 gallons or less per can, they would simply switch over to one 65-gallon cart, and it would just be one tip. Some of the other considerations are costs. These rollout carts cost anywhere from $30 to $45 a piece, depending on the size, but many of the carts that are out there in service are getting 15-plus years of service. You compare that to what plastic or galvanized garbage can that you get down at the hardware store. If you get 3 to 4 years in good conditions with those, you're probably doing fairly well. Some of the other considerations are the existing containers that are already out there. How do we deal with those? First, we would encourage other uses, like yard waste, for instance, or some other storage with the existing containers. And then some communities have offered collections of unwanted containers or recycling of the containers that are recyclable, or some combination of all three of those. And then folks' reluctance to change that's going to be another consideration. Will require some education. This testimonial speaks to the success and customer satisfaction that Spokane, Washington experienced when they transitioned to a rollout cart system. Another benefit to automated collection is that the residents love it. Not being sure how they would embrace the new collection method, citizens were surveyed during the pilot program, and 97% of the respondents indicated that they found the automated carts much easier to move around and thought their neighborhood looked significantly better on collection day with the uniform containers. There were a few residents that resisted the change at first, but now you couldn't get them to give up their carts if you tried. This is another testimonial from a county in Florida, and again, they had pretty high customer satisfaction going to this type of system. transfer station upgrade assessment. The transfer facility was originally designed in 1993 with a 30-year lifespan, which is rapidly approaching. We'll assess the physical structure and any needed upgrades to ensure that the facility functions efficiently through the term of the franchise agreement and then possibly beyond. Last year we did a pretty extensive concrete floor repair out there at the facility, and it's just pretty rough duty at a transfer station, so large repairs and expensive repairs, if you don't stay on top of them, they can sneak up on you, so we'll be looking at things like that. Recycle center expansion. The recycling center expansion plans were developed by Castellacom Architects back in 2001. We'll conduct a review of those existing plans with community users, the franchisee, and city staff to determine if they still meet the needs as they were intended. Then develop an action plan and recommendation to City Council. I apologize for the plan there. I know it's kind of hard to see. Growth as well as customer service and public safety considerations were the drive behind this plan. Jackson Street's here. I don't know how well you can see that. C Street, Almond Street. This is the existing recycle center as it sits now. The bins for dropping off your recyclable items are adjacent to Jackson there, and the new plan calls for these bins to be moved up into the south lot adjacent to C Street, with parking being directly adjacent to C Street. And that'll do a couple different things. The customers accessing the facility will be able to access these bins without having to walk through forklift traffic. The forklifts will be able to service these bins from the backside, and it'll be a heck of a lot safer. And it also calls for a new redemption building over in this area. And then another phase of the plan calls for some additional warehouse storage in this area where the current parking lot and drop-off area is. And according to Andy Boyd down there, that's one of his biggest issues is storage of goods. When the recycling center first opened in '95, they processed a little over 2,400 tons a year, and our latest numbers from 2009 show that they processed a little over 3,800 tons of material, which is about a 37% increase in that amount of time. So it just continues to grow year after year. Excuse me. Rate study. The rate study will review and analyze historical data, cost of service, classify and allocate costs to customer classes equitably, and design a rate structure to generate sufficient revenue to meet the short and long-term objectives of the city. The first water and sewer rate study was very successful, and we'll apply that same type of strategy to the solid waste rates for the very first time. This study will also assist us in determining the rates we'll need to have in place to position ourselves for that year of 2023. Community deliverables. These deliverables will be important in measuring the success of the plan. Consistently provide customer service that is equitable to the citizens at a fair value. Continuously improve service levels by utilizing best practices available, quickly respond to customer service needs, seek and gain community collaboration and support for solid waste and recycling initiatives, and provide opportunities for education regarding solid waste and recycling issues. Then where do we go from here? Operational business choices to be made, such as evaluating contract provisions and establishing a new business model in anticipation of renewal of the franchise contract. This was also presented to the Sustainable Environment Commission, which they endorsed.